Words do not express how much this game means to me. I've spent many hours of my life with this cast of characters, and it seems fitting to be making a video ranking, but really just talking about all of them. For characters that have multiple promotions, I will be ranking both separately, as they can produce much different results. So Sarah as a Master Monk will be ranked separately from Sarah as a Vicar. So before we get started, I should note that I'm ranking these characters based on how well they perform in battle, their story, or lack thereof, their look and design, and most importantly, how much I like them, and this is really the only thing that matters. This list is mostly based on how I play the game, so the list assumes you will not be redoing any battles for extra XP, there will be no or limited egressing, promotions will be done at level 20, and perhaps most importantly, this list mostly just takes into account the standard difficulty setting. Oh, and one more thing, I'm gonna pronounce names, places, and characters wrong. I'm just a guy who loves this game, but I'm no expert. So with that out of the way, let's dive in. Bowie is the leader of the Force, and despite the rumors that he is a silent protagonist, he does speak 12 times. Not much is known of Bowie's background. There are rumors about his lineage, but that's all there is, rumors. His father died before the game, so we only meet his mom when we wake up. Bowie is a swordsman, and to start, that gives him a good attack and so-so defense in the beginning of the game. As he gains levels, both those areas improve significantly, until he has one of the best attack and defense combinations in the game, especially towards the end of the game when he gets the Force Sword, the final weapon for him. When promoted to Hero, he will learn the Bolt spell to give him another option in his arsenal, though he will usually only have enough MP to cast it once or twice. The promotion will also give him the best damn sprite in the game. The long hair and the cape flowing in the wind gets me every time. Bowie does have a drawback though, and it's the same drawback all Shining Force heroes have. If he dies, you will lose the battle, and this will always hold you back from unleashing his full potential. Even with this limitation, he's still gonna end up in the Great tier. He certainly lives up to the hero class. All of the healers in this game are fundamentally broken, except for Sarah. In fact, Sarah is so bad at being a healer, she will make you think they're all bad. She did this to me for years. Sarah is one of the first two members of the Force, and if you play her correctly, she can be by your side the whole game. In the beginning, she will be there to heal your units when required, and chip in with the odd kill here and there. And do make sure to save some kills for her, because having her just focus on healing at this point in the game won't get her enough experience to keep up with the rest of the team. And this really is the problem with Sarah as a unit. If you don't take care of her, she will fall behind the rest of the Force. Special care will need to be taken until she is promoted, which by that point in the game, there's likely enough healing to be done for her to keep up. Sarah's spell pool is weak compared to the other healers in the game. She gets heal and learns heal 2, 3, and 4 earlier than anybody else. Her other spells are detox, which removes poison, paralysis, sleep, etc. But to be honest, the status effects aren't too bad in this game, so it's a bit of a wasted slot. She also gets blast, a wind damage spell that's underpowered compared to blaze, freeze, or bolt, and she learns slow, a spell which will lower an enemy's defense and agility, which can be very powerful if used at the right time. It's upon promotion that she really stands out. Sarah can be promoted to either a Vicar or a Master Monk if you have a Vigor Ball. It's when Sarah is made into a Master Monk that she really shines. When promoted to Master Monk, she gains access to fist weapons, which skyrockets her attack and turns her into a melee class that can also heal. This makes her mediocre spell pool more acceptable as she's not so dependent on it. Sarah as a Master Monk is a great unit, who could possibly be S tier if it wasn't so hard to get her to promotion. That extra effort to get her promoted is going to push her behind Bowie. Sarah as a Vicar though, that's another story. Many of the same problems that plague her on her journey to promotion will plague her here. While she has the best single target heal in the game, every other healer has a better spell pool and an ability to farm XP. Sarah as a Vicar is fine, bordering on trash when compared to the other healers. Yes, I am aware there is an exploit where you can get goddess staffs very early in the game, which turns Vicar Sarah into a god, but I feel the combination of events required to make that happen doesn't really fall under the normal gameplay loop. Chester is Bowie's schoolyard chum, and like a good friend, he'll always be there. He's not a spectacular unit, but he is dependable and will always be an adequate frontline member of the Force, especially in the beginning, since he's here from the start and he's got the chance to worm his way into your heart. As a knight, Chester can attack with lances and spears. Spears are usually weaker than lances, but the lances do give him a 2 square attack range, which is welcome in the early game, and is never a bad option. As a knight, Chester has 7 movement, which is the highest natural movement in the game, and it lets him rush in to help others anywhere on the map, as long as they're not trapped in a forest or high upon a mountaintop. Compared to the other knights in the game, Chester has a high HP pool and the weakest physical defense. He's basically the reincarnation of Ken from Shining Force 1. Chester, like many units, has the option to promote to multiple classes. His default class is a paladin, which is really just a knight with a different name. I'd probably place him in the good tier. He's fine as a paladin, but nothing to write home about. If you want to put in the extra effort, Chester can be promoted to Pegasus Knight, which sounds great, but there are problems with this. First, you won't get the Pegasus Knight promotion item until later in the game, much later than the game expects you to promote, which means that Chester will have to stay unpromoted for quite a few battles, and his performance will start to show it, as he won't be getting the stat growths the other units get, and he won't be able to equip the weapon upgrades, so he'll start to lag behind. The second, Pegasus Knights aren't that great of a class. Sure, they fly, but it comes at a cost since it means Chester's defense will struggle since he's no longer getting terrain boosts. And this little change turns him into a bit of a glass cannon. Well, without the cannon, since his attack isn't all that special. I actually rank Chester as a Pegasus Knight lower than a Paladin. I just don't think it's worth the wait for something that might not be better than his default class. Chester as a Paladin is going in fine tier. Early game Jaha is the best unit in the Force, and it stays that way until Peter shows up and he starts to make everybody look bad. Let's start there. Jaha joins the Force after the game's first battle. Turns out he slept in and he missed it. I feel ya, Jaha. When he steps in wielding his axe, he will be the strongest unit in both attack power and defense, and with enough HP to survive magic attacks too. He will stay strong throughout the game, but he does start to have competition. Honestly, his biggest problem might be that he's just not as sexy as some of the other units who fill this role, as his stats remain strong throughout the game. His only real flaw is that he has low movement, which leads to him falling behind in the race to take down the enemy. If promoted to Gladiator, this trend will continue. He'll have great stats and become an even better tank. He may struggle to keep up, but if you give him the running ring or the running pimento, you'll turn that weakness into a strength. Jaha as a Gladiator is a great unit, though behind the others we've mentioned. Jaha's second promotion path is to Baron, which allows him to use swords as well as axes, and ups his movement from 5 to 6, fixing his biggest problem. However, the Baron's defense does not grow as high as a Gladiator, and while the Baron has added utility, it makes him have a slightly less defined role. To me, the extra defense is important. The Baron is still a great unit, but he's just not as great as a Gladiator. Also, let's be honest here, there's only one real Baron in this game. Poor Kazin, you get put through an emotional gauntlet in the story, and I've got some ranting to do about you. End magic. Kazin is the apprentice mage of Sir Howell, who he watches die in his arms after being attacked by Gallum soldiers looking for information about the ground seal. Kazin is fantastic to start. His Blaze 1 spell will do similar damage to other characters' attacks, and he gets the stronger Blaze 2 as soon as you level up. Then he doesn't get Blaze 3 until level 22, or level 2 as a wizard. This is probably the time to touch on Kazin's 2 promotion paths. He can promote to a wizard or a sorcerer. We'll keep talking about the wizard class for now. Anyway, Kazin gets Blaze 3 as a level 2 wizard. That's 16 levels with just Blaze 2 for damage. By comparison, Taya in Shining Force 1 would learn Blaze 3 at level 12. And here you start to see the problem with offensive magic in Shining Force 2. With few exceptions, it's just not very good. The best way to illustrate this is to compare to Shining Force 1. Blaze, Freeze, and Bolt do comparable damage between the two games. The major difference is that the enemies in Shining Force 2 have a much larger HP pool. So a Blaze 4 that does 40 to 50 damage can kill enemies in one hit in Shining Force 1, but would only take half of an endgame enemy's HP in Shining Force 2. This makes mages and wizards less powerful. The developers noticed this as well, since magic is drastically improved in Shining Force 3. So Wizard Kazin has a mediocre Blaze spell. What else does he have? Dispel, which works like silence, and almost all of the time just hitting a Blaze spell would be better. Muddle can be useful, but it's not really dependable. D-Soul can be a great spell if it lands. D-Soul 2 can be exceptional, again if it lands, and if it doesn't, it's a waste of a turn and MP. Shining Force 3 also makes D-Soul better. Play Shining Force 3. So Kazin as a wizard just can't cut the mustard, and I think he's gonna fall all the way down to fine, but ahead of Pegasus Knight Chester. That said, Kazin is the best sorcerer in the game. Sure, he has the best stats, but since he's the first character to get access to the class, he'll always have the largest amount of spells, since all sorcerers start with just Deo level 1. Which brings us to a dirty secret about the summoner. They're kinda boring. Each summoner gets access to 4 spells: Deo, Apollo, Neptune, and Atlas. And all these spells are kinda the same. They all summon a god to do a set amount of damage. There's not really much variance between them. Now here comes a rant. I hate the way summons work. This is the magic area of effect grid. When casting the traditional blaze, freeze, or bolt spell, your goal is to cast your spells on as many enemies at once. There is a strategy involved in positioning your units so that the enemy units will be caught in this grid. It's extremely satisfying when it happens. Summons work the exact opposite way. They also have a grid, but the way the summoner's spells work is that the spell itself will do a set amount of damage. So if you cast it on one enemy, it will do 50 damage, and if you execute a golden grid, you'll do 10 damage to each of the 5 units. It's a bummer. Now, there is a strategy to positioning units so that you can land these max damage hits, and having the option to split damage can be situationally useful. I just don't like it. That said, I can't deny the power that the sorcerer possesses, and Kazin is the sorcerer supreme. In the great tier behind Bowie, and behind Master Monk Sarah out of spite. Take that, sorcerer class. In a word, Slade is awesome. If Slade didn't exist, there would be no Shunning Force 2. He and his goons are responsible for unsealing Xeon and handing the Jewels of Light and Darkness over to King Gallum. He does try to make things right by joining the Force, and that's the last we hear from him. I've always felt his character could use a bit more story for being so important. The only knock against Slade is that he's pretty weak when we first recruit him. He's probably 1 level behind the rest of your force, and hits about as hard as the mages. He's also got crap defense and HP. About the only thing he has going for him is 7 movement. It's very possible that he will fall into a pit he will never get out of. But if you can catch him up in the first or second battle, he'll be good to great up until promotion. It's when he's promoted to ninja that he really shines. He drops the daggers for more powerful swords, picks up some adequate AoE magic, and his attack and defense begin to improve to the point where he will be one of your best units. He also looks hella cool as a ninja. It would also be wrong of me not to mention his ultimate weapon, the Gizarm, a weapon that occasionally causes Slade to land an instant death attack where he slices enemies in half, which is even more valuable on higher difficulties. If not for the early game issues, Slade might be legendary. Instead, he will slot in at the top of great, since unlike Bowie, he can die and life will go on. Kiwi, buddy, I love you and I'm sorry. Kiwi is the first hidden character we can recruit, and he's awesome. Both of his designs are cool, his unpromoted sprite is all kinds of adorable, and the helmet he throws at enemies is top notch. His Gamera-inspired promoted sprite is even cooler. He's so cool. As a unit, he is designed to be a tank and nothing else. His gimmick is that he has extremely low HP and an extremely high defense. So your goal is to have him engaged with physical attackers and to never ever go anywhere near mages. And this works okay, even well at times. But as the game goes on, his defense doesn't grow enough to make up for his limited HP growth. So he goes from being able to eat 7 hits to being able to eat about 3 or 4 if you're lucky. The worst part is the amount of flying magic around the mid to late game starts to make him unusable, as magic units will begin to attack from further and further range and do more damage. On top of this, he's also vulnerable to fire breath, cold breath, and all types of special attacks certain melee units use, making him downright unusable. On the plus side, Kiwi gets a breath attack of his own when he's promoted, and it's overpowered for the mid game, but in the end game, it will do less than a normal physical attack. It's just another nail in Kiwi's coffin. But all is not lost. This list isn't based purely on unit performance. It's also based on how cool and interesting a character's design is, and also how much I like them. And Kiwi, I love you so much you're getting a tier all of your own, between good and fine, and we will call it the Kiwi tier. Because damn it, I will try to use you before anyone else in fine gets a chance. There's a part of me that just wants to put Peter in the legendary tier and call it a day. But here we go. Peter has the highest attack in the game, one of the largest HP pools, pretty great defense, a built-in boosted defense against fire, and he will resurrect himself if he falls in battle. He is a phoenix after all. And when he is promoted, he does all this by flying around with 7 movement. It's not a mistake that the entire Shining Force 2 speedrun is built around boosting Peter with the power ring and flying towards the boss and killing them. Now it seems like the time to talk about the advantage that unarmed units have. The attack spell will increase their attack considerably more than a unit that has a weapon equipped. This is because the spell calculates how much of an increase a unit will get based on the unit's base attack value. The value for a weapon user is much lower, since their overall attack is their base attack plus a weapon, whereas an unarmed unit only has a base attack. This makes Peter an even greater unit. I should also add, an argument could be made that Peter is actually the main character of the game. Sure, he joins around the fifth of the way through, but he follows you around the whole time, and has a significantly larger speaking role than any other character. Peter is legendary, and there's no argument. Will anybody join him? May is so fed up with her small town life that she leaps at the chance to join the Force. May is an archer, a ranger, and she's competent, which is a vast improvement over the Shining Force 1 archers. She never drags the party down, and you're never disappointed to have her along. Sure, having Chester around might make the fact that May can't attack enemies directly beside her limiting, but you'll still be happy to have her. It's when you promote her, and she gains the ability to attack from 3 squares away, that she really shines. This, combined with her 6 movement, which is better than the other archers in the game, makes it so that she will always have an action to take in battle. It's only when you start to reach the endgame that her damage output starts to lag behind the melee attackers, and your wizards start to outdamage her with single target spells. Still, she's the best archer in the game, and if you want one in your force, you're gonna need her. I'm just gonna place her in good, above Paladin Chester. She's never exceptional, but she is best in class. There is no greater joy for me in this game than watching Geralt just punching enemies in the face. Geralt is a beastman from Polka who's jealous of the other beastmen. When Bowie, Peter, Luke, and the rest of the village get attacked, he jumps to help and joins the Force. Featuring one of the highest attack stats in the game and no movement penalties when promoted, Geralt is a welcome addition to the Force and will find a place in your party, possibly for the whole game. Once promoted, Geralt transforms into my favorite werewolf design in the whole series. Great sprites, high attack, what's not to love? Geralt has 2 knocks against him. First, he has 5 movement, which while disappointing can be worked around with good positioning, or just by fully turning him into Xylo with the running pimento. Geralt also doesn't have the best defense for a frontline melee unit. He can take a hit, but not as many as the tankier units. These drawbacks aren't huge, they're just being mentioned to explain why Geralt is only in Great Tier, behind Bowie and ahead of Master Monk Sarah, instead of Legendary. You're a good boy, Wolfie. Luke attempts to join the Force and is promptly hit by a devil and knocked out. It's a good preview of what life with Luke will be. To begin, Luke seems like a solid addition. As the Prince of Bedeau and best friend to Peter, you're expecting him to be the best of the best. And you know what? Seeing the other Birdmen available to us, maybe he is. That said, you'd expect the Prince of the Birdmen to be equipped with something better than a damned middle sword. Luke has bad defense, which is made worse by the fact that he gains no terrain boosts because he's flying. His attack is also not great. I feel like he's designed to dart in and kill enemy units, then dart out of danger, but he doesn't have the attack for that. It also doesn't help that he has Peter out there making him look even worse. So he's trash then? Not quite. He has a purpose. Very soon after he joins, you do the Kraken battle, a famous battle, and the quickest way to beat it is to buff Peter using the attack spell from the power ring, and having someone to fly out there with Peter and heal him just in case. And who is that person? It's Luke. Luke is going to end up in fine tier. I usually end up replacing him fairly quickly, but at the end of the day, he does have a use. I like my knights to be beefy, and Rick is probably the beefiest knight there is. By far the best knight at tanking, he's probably the knight with the lowest attack. That's okay though. That's more or less what May from Shining Force 1 is, and I adore her. Does he have a great story like her? Sadly, no. He has no story. He's pretty much just looking for adventure, and that along with his childish portrait and design is probably the biggest knock against Rick. If you're using Rick solely as a tank, you're probably best to go with him as a paladin, to get the added terrain boosts. If you go Pegasus Knight though, he can still tank, since he gets great defense growth as a Pegasus Knight as well. If I intend to use a Pegasus Knight, he usually ends up getting the nod, since with his defense, he's always a bit more hardy than the other Pegasus Knights you get by default, and that's always my biggest flaw with them. But my biggest flaw with Rick is that he's not memorable. Statistically, both these promoted versions should probably end up in great, but he's just so bland it's gonna cost both forms to go down a tier, with the Pegasus version coming out ahead, I guess. Sure. Poor Ulrich never stood a chance. We have to rescue him from, I don't know, the 6 feet of water that he's been trapped in by the local harpies who intend to make a meal out of him. Upon rescuing him, we find out he's an archer and promptly throw him back into the pond. If you do want to use him, you'll probably want to promote him to have the extra range on his attack. Bad news, you'll have to backtrack all the way to the previous town to get him a weapon, because the elven village has none. But finally, we've got him promoted. Let's use him in this next battle. Crap, he can't move. Yep, that's right. The place where he starts in the next battle, due to where he is in the force order, puts him in a spot where he can't move off the forest tiles he's trapped on. He just starts on the back foot, and even if you get him going, his attack power is pitiful anyways. This wonderful unit has 2 upgrade paths, but they both have similar outcomes. By default, he promotes to Sniper, which at least has a solid battle sprite. As a Sniper, he's in the bottom of fine. With the Silver Tank, he can be promoted to a Brass Gunner, which is an abomination of a unit type. I hate this design as it removes all expressiveness from the characters. And on top of that, the Brass Gunner can barely move in battle. Ulrich as a Brass Gunner is trash tier. We're 20 minutes in, and we're just now coming up on the 4 units from Creed's Mansion. We can only really pick one of these units, though we can recruit the others later on. I will not be weighing in the acquisition cost of choosing one of these units in these rankings, choosing purely to rank them on their own merits. Karna is the best character we can recruit here, so let's talk about her first. Karna doesn't have much backstory, like most of the units we'll get from Creed's. She can come off a bit bratty, but it's hard to really come up with a personality when she only has 4 lines of dialogue. As a unit though, Karna is kinda broken, and raises the question of what is an exploit and what is a game balancing mistake. Earlier I mentioned Sarah is the best unit in the game if you use an exploit to get the goddess staff, but I'm not counting that, since to me, that's an exploit. Well, Karna can pretty much do this too, but she can do it without manipulating the game. It's just that the experience generated from her spells is broken. Karna has 2 broken spells, Boost and Aura. Boost will give you 5 experience for each person it is cast on. It starts as a 5-person spell at level 1. This effectively gives you 25 XP for 2 MP. There is a level 2 version that has an even greater range that can net you 49 XP for just 5 MP. The only downside is that you can't recast it on characters it is active on, but it fades away after 2 turns, allowing you to do the same thing. You can cast this whenever you aren't healing or attacking, and it lets you rack up levels fast. I should also note that the boost spell raises the defense and agility of the units it's cast on, so it's a pretty useful spell on top of all this. Aura works much the same way. It's an area of effect heal spell, which costs 7 MP. The difference between Aura and Boost is that you can cast Aura on units that already have full health, and if you have 3 units in your area of effect, you'll net 25 XP. So you can essentially just cast Aura over and over again and rack up levels. Oh, and she has Boost when you recruit her, so there's no effort to put in to unlock this potential. She's the only unit that learns Aura 4 that has the potential to actually use it in a standard playthrough without needing to grind endlessly. She has 2 promotion paths available to her, and both of them will end up being extremely powerful. She is frankly unstoppable as a Master Monk, since, well, Master Monks themselves might be a bit broken. Turning her into a Master Monk will allow her to have a high attack while still being able to heal. As a Master Monk, she will probably be 5 to 10 or even more levels ahead of your main party, which makes up for the fact that Sarah does actually have a higher attack value than her. She is effectively broken as a monk and is basically walking death. She goes into the Karna is broken tier, which is the highest tier we have for now. She's not much worse as a vicar. In fact, an argument could be made that she's better, as she'll have a higher MP pool, and the further you go in levels, the less noticeable the difference in attack power will be. That said, you can't be a broken vicar if you don't learn heal 4. And it's a long road, perhaps too long a road to get Aura 4. We're just gonna have to place her in Great, as I think without the extra attack of a Master Monk, and without heal 4, she's not gonna be broken, just quite strong. Oh, and one more great aspect about Karna, because she's so easy to level, you don't even have to pick her the first time you go to Creed's. She can catch up if you get her later. Tyrant is a better mage and wizard than Kazin, and the reason why comes down to one spell. Freeze. Tyrant's Freeze is a superior spell to Kazin's Blaze in almost every way. It does more damage, and more importantly, has a larger attack range, so you can do more damage and stay safer than Kazin. He also knows Kazin's Blaze spell too, so even if you are a Blaze Fiend, Tyrant can do that. Wizard Tyrant has 2 disadvantages to Kazin. First, he only starts with Freeze and Blaze too, so he won't blow you away to start. In fact, you might think you've made a mistake, but he learns Freeze 3 on his first level up, so things are starting to look good. He has the same mid-game malaise that Kazin has, where his spells won't do enough damage to be that impressive. But if you can get him to level 16, he will pick up Freeze 4 and be able to wreck worlds. He also picks up Bolt, and more importantly Bolt 2 to give him a bit more late game utility. And his one status effect spell, Sleep, is probably better than any of Kazin's aside from maybe Diesel. In the end, if you can get Tyrant to the late game, he's a fabulous wizard, but that mid-game malaise is going to put him in the top of good. That's a lie. Freeze 4 is too damn good, bottom of great you go. Tyrant can also become a sorcerer. It's a bit harder to rank him, mostly because he's a better wizard than Kazin, so the jump to sorcerer isn't as clear cut as it is with Kazin. He learns spells a touch faster than Kazin, but not enough to really matter, since Kazin would already have those spell levels if you turned him into a sorcerer by the time Tyrant joins. If we were to just rank Kazin versus Tyrant as a character, Tyrant comes out way on top, but if you rank them as sorcerers, it's pretty even. Now I kinda dislike the format I've chosen, since the best option is Tyrant as a wizard and Kazin as a sorcerer. Sigh. Tyrant is a better sorcerer than Kazin because he learns Atlas 2 3 levels earlier, which means he might be able to use it before the game is over. So I guess he's great, and above Kazin? Sure, why not? Eric and I have history. The first time I ever completed Creed's Mansion and finished the section with Xeon, I was so excited that when I ran out of Creed's Mansion, I did not talk to Goliath to understand I had a choice of units. I talked to Eric first and he told me he was searching for a legendary sword and asked me if he could join the force, and I was like, hell yeah, the more the merrier. Then I watched the other units disappear and I realized I had made a terrible, terrible mistake. Now, Eric himself is not a disappointment. He possesses the best HP and attack growth of all the knight units, and a decent enough defense as well. He makes an excellent paladin, and his paladin version ends up in the good tier. Why only good? Because honestly, paladins kinda bore me. And it's also hard to put pure weapon users in the great tier unless they do something spectacular, as they get less of a boost from the attack spell. Now, as a Pegasus Knight, Eric excels. His high attack allows him to dive in, attack, kill the target, and not worry too much about a counterattack. He's not Peter, but he's the closest we're gonna get in the game. Pegasus Knight Eric is a great unit through and through. Above Janet and below Kazin? Sure. Oh Randolph, I've never picked you, and probably never will, and that's not really your fault. You might just be the best Baron/Gladiator in the game, but we sort of have other slow melee characters in our force, and you're just not that much of an upgrade over them. And also, you're just not that much fun. This is Eric's problem too. They are the superior unit, but they aren't going to be used. Both Kazin and Sarah have the potential to be underleveled or underpowered. Tyrant and Karna are significantly superior options depending on their promotion paths, whereas Randolph and Eric can be replaced in many different ways. The potential for a great backstory, where we hear about Randolph tragically falling off the desktop kingdom only to rise to the leader of the Four People, is there. That is his backstory, it's just not that fleshed out. Randolph, for as boring as he is still a fantastic unit. Seriously, his defense is off the charts. But both his Gladiator and Baron promotions are going to be ranked behind Jaha, even if they are statistically superior, just because Jaha is so great in the early game and more than holds his own later on. We're also going to put the Gladiator form over the Baron form again, because it just makes Randolph's already high defense that much better. Janet always seems to find a way into my force. Not for long, but she does get used, which is more than I can say for Ulrich. Her big advantage over her love is that we don't have to backtrack to use her, and she can move around in the first battle we have her in. She's not going to wow you with her damage output, which does tend to fall off as you get back to Grands, and her defense will only allow her to take one hit and nothing else, but she is an archer and not there to be hit anyway. Janet, like Ulrich, has two promotion paths. If you promote her to sniper, you get access to the slick, pink sniper sprite. As a sniper, Janet is going to go in fine, and above Ulrich, since well he has better stats, I like Janet more, and that counts. It's my list, damn it. You know what? We're going to put her ahead of Pegasus Knight Chester too. It's just so dumb that that wing comes so late. She can also become a brass gunner, which removes too much pink from the battlefield and hides all of Janet's charm. Trash. At this point, I'm wondering, why are all my archers mediocre and all the enemy archers so damn powerful? Maybe it will get better with Road. It doesn't. Road is a pretty interesting guy, a bit of a stuffy archaeologist. He doesn't give us the time of day until we show up with the Achilles sword, and then he's all about being our friend, sensing he can use us to defeat Taros and unlock the caravan. Scheming aside, he does prove himself useful when he's able to pilot the caravan, and proves himself loyal when he doesn't just drive away with it. After seeing how much damage a cannon can do, he gets the bright idea to attach it to a car and join our force. Then it's all downhill for him as a character as the game just forgets he exists. Road is a brass gunner, and I've already made my feelings clear about the class, and to make matters worse for Road, we just got Janna the battle before he joins. What's with the Shining Force games and shoving a class on us all at once? It's the pile of Chapter 4 Centaurs in number 1, and the 3 mid-game archers in number 2. If you use Road until the end of the game, he can end up with the best stats of the 3 archers, with his attack only slightly behind May. He gets damn good defense for an archer, but it's worth asking, why is your archer being hit anyway? He's going in fine, above Chester, but below Janet. I tend to play a little fast and loose, and he just doesn't fit my playstyle. Also, brass gunners are dumb. Higgins deserves your respect. I've read so many posts making fun of him, treating him as a joke. Listen here, Higgins is a captain in the Pelican army. Pelican is a town with a significant military judging by its design and population. His mustache game is second to none. It's glorious, and he has all of this before even joining the force. He's everything Chester aspires to be. When he joins the force though, he's everything Chester is, and a touch worse. There's no real reason to use Higgins unless you don't have any leveled paladins, and even then. It also seems like Higgins is supposed to work like Peter and Lemon, where he automatically resurrects himself after battle because he was possessed by devils, but that's not the case. Anyway, Higgins is going in fine tier. He's not going to actively drag your party down with his presence, but again, behind Janet. I'm starting to feel like Janet is a cut-up between characters I like but aren't good, and characters I dislike who aren't good. Don't worry, we'll always have the Higgins spell to remember you. Taya might be the reason I don't like sorcerers, since she was the first one I ever had on my team, and she's real bad. Why is she so bad? First, her defense is by far the worst of the sorcerers. It's not impossible for her to get one shot in the first battle after she joins, which is swell. She also joins with only one spell, level 1 Deo. For comparison, level 11 Kazin and Tyrant would already have Apollo, Neptune, and will be working on Deo too. And these spells matter because it's her only way of causing damage and getting experience, because sorcerers have no utility spells. This trend continues with her, as she'll learn Atlas 2, 5 levels after Tyrant and 2 after Kazin. She's just always behind. It's sad that she spent so much time trapped in stone by Zalbird at Matula's temple, only to later be trapped in my caravan. I guess if you don't have a sorcerer, she can be serviceable, but she's just going in the low end of fine. Screech is the most personally disappointing character to me in the game. Gather around, children. You're about to hear a story about a time when Google did not exist and walkthroughs were hard to find. There is a code you can enter when naming Bowie at the start of the game that will allow you to name all of the Force members. This will show you all of the characters in the game. I, being a cocky child, thought I knew them all until the portrait of a Birdman I'd never seen popped up. Flabbergasted, I searched for who this was and how to get him. The who was Screech, and the how requires you saving him as a chicken Bedeau by standing in a very out-of-the-way spot. If you do this, he will join you in Tristan. I was stoked. Then I found out he was a Birdman, with weaker defense than Luke. This guy can't take a hit, and even if he could, he still can't compare to Peter or the Flying Knights. I was disappointed, and immediately sent him to the caravan, and he was never to be seen again. Screech may have a better attack than Luke, but Luke was at least useful for a battle or two. For committing the crime of disappointing a child, Screech is trash. Why are all the units we get from Tristan so bad? That town needs to pull itself together. Jaro is my favorite type of character. Whether it's Kane, Magus, or Piccolo, I've always had a place in my heart for the bad guy who turns good. And in the middle of a battle, no less, giving our force 13 members for one battle and one battle only. Jaro is a Pegasus Knight in the Gallim army. Gallim has a ton of these guys in their army, so they must have a surplus of wings lying around. Palicon would be jealous. Unless you're using a guide, Jaro will be the only Pegasus Knight available to you. And he's alright. I've never been a fan of him due to his low defense, but compared to the other non-Pegasus Knight flying units, he's better than either Luke or Screech. Due to his mobility, it's 7, whereas the birds are 6. And since he can use spears, he can also attack from range. And because of this and that gnarly scar he's rocking, I'm gonna place him just at the end of good. I didn't think he'd be that high when I started, but the rarity of Pegasus Knights helps him here. Freya is probably the least attractive character in the game when he joins. He's a vicar, which might be the least exciting class in the game. He starts with heal 2, when all of your other healers will at least have heal 3, and his second spell is detox. That's right, he starts with an underpowered heal and detox. Wonderful, but that's not all. He doesn't exactly endear himself via storyline either. He's responsible for locking the Gate of Mount, keeping the devils out of the continent though, but they're here anyway, and more importantly, dooming the people of Mound, or so we thought. It might have been the right choice to make, but it still paints him in a bad light. And have you seen his face? Looks aren't everything, but they are something. So he's trash, right? Well, not exactly. See, he's secretly the best healer in the game. If you can somehow get him a level, he'll get access to aura. Big whoop, Karna has this too, you think? And that's true, which means Freya can do the same XP trick Karna can do. He can't do it as well, since he doesn't have boost, but it still makes him very easy to level, all the way up to aura 4. And he'll learn the attack spell as well, which is phenomenal. He also gets heal 4 eventually, which Karna doesn't have access to, and while Sarah does, her pool of spells is very bad. The problem with all of this is that we have to invest in him, and deal with an extremely long time where he's only going to have the power of heal 1. And at this point in the game, that's just not enough. Look, I understand if you put time and effort into Freya, he becomes great. He just doesn't do it for me. When he joins the party and forces his way into the Battle of Mound, I always aggress and kick him out. He does nothing for me. I do acknowledge his hidden power though, and I will place him in good, and maybe his end game potential would push him higher, but my god, he has terrible character design, and that has to count for something. Gaian is very hard to care about, though the game does at least try to give us some backstory. Gaian was trapped in the north when the cave connecting North and South Parmesia was blocked by a rockfall. Unable to get back home to see his family, he decided to settle in Mound, which also had tragic consequences. With the tunnel now open, he's excited to return home, until he learns the Shining Force is out to defeat the devils who have caused so much trouble. Eager to help the Force, and stating that his family would understand. Speaking of his family, I've always felt the home where the family talks about the father being away in Ribble is his family, but I've never seen that made canon. As a unit, he is pretty much a lesser version of Gladiator Jaha. He's got better HP growth, but he's worse everywhere else. He's basically just here to provide you with a tank if Jaha or Randolph fell on their face, which is possible. He'll likely get replaced by either Zinc, Claude, or Lemon later on, but he's not useless. The fact that the first 2 battles after he joins the Force doesn't have any enemies close by can make him feel slower than he actually is too. Gaian has his place. It's not spectacular, but it is fine. Sheila is debatably the worst of the Master Monks we have available to us in the game. She has a weaker attack than Karna or Sarah, and a worse spell pool too, since she starts with heal 2 and doesn't get heal 3 until level 21. She's basically a Master Monk that doesn't hit as hard, heal as well, and dies faster than the other 2. Where's the debate? Well, she, like Karna, can farm XP with the boost spell. That's one up on Sarah, and like Sarah, she can cast heal 4. Something Karna can't do, though Karna gets aura 4, which does kind of make up for it. Another knock against Sheila is that if you have Karna farming XP, it can be hard to farm with Sheila too, leaving her the odd monk out since Karna's likely already overpowered by now. One thing she undoubtedly has over the other 2 though is backstory. One of Astriel's old pupils, she was well on her way to becoming a priest before her fiancé was cut down by the Red Baron. Her lust for revenge fuels her to become the fighting machine she is. I always try to have her deliver the killing blow to the Red Baron. Pity she has no unique dialogue when we confront him. This is similar to May in Shining Force 1 who says nothing when we finally confront Kane. While I know the potential is there for Sheila to rocket ahead of Sarah in levels, which does make up for her lack of attack, I just can't bring myself to put a Master Monk who starts with heal 2 so far into the game ahead of Master Monk Sarah. Also, if you have Sarah and Karna as Master Monks, she's very redundant. But there's another side to this argument. If you're new to the game, or missed the Vigor Balls, Sheila is the only Master Monk in the game, and all of a sudden she looks remarkably better. This one's a bit hard, but I think she's going to go into great, behind the other Master Monks. It's a borderline broken class on standard difficulty. Well, at least Zinc isn't the most disappointing robot in the Shining series. Adam still holds that crown. We find Zinc after defeating the devils in Mound. He's been protecting the townsfolk all along, and he's been doing a great job. With the townspeople safe, he tags along with us and teaches us how to fly the Nazca ship. Eventually, we stumble on a scene where we witness Petro die, saying the devils killed and betrayed him. This more than any of the atrocities that must have been committed in Mound, forces Zinc to join our force. Fun fact, if you skip this scene, Zinc will leave the force after the Red Baron fight and return to Roft. As a unit, Zinc is underwhelming. I think he's designed to be a tank with some offensive upside, but there's just not enough upside to him for me. It's not that his attack is bad, I just expect more of a unit with so much story. This usually leads me to sticking with my main force and tank. Well, that and his 4 movement. Zinc is a unit that I want to put in my force. I tend to favor units with backstory, but he's just never enough and leaves me disappointed. He's gonna end up in fine, since he can still be a serviceable unit at times. Claude the Golem, if managed correctly, is one of the strongest characters in the game, and secret characters like him should be, unlike that Screech guy. He potentially has the highest attack and defense ratings in the game, and since he's unarmed, he can get large boosts from the attack spell when it's used on him. Hell, since he has such a large defense, boost is also great on him. So what holds him back? Well, he's got low agility, the lowest in the game. He is made of stone after all. He's got a movement of 4, which can be fixed with a pimento or a running ring, but it's still a knock against him if you need an item to make him useful. Otherwise, you'll need to slow your force down to an efficient crawl for him to keep up. His biggest drawback though is probably his HP. It's not as low as Kiwi's, but it has the same problem. He can still be sniped by Freeze 4, and unlike Kiwi, his low movement can make it hard for him to escape. Still, it's a much bigger improvement from needing to run away from every form of magic. Claude actually has a resistance to fire as well, which doesn't hurt. Claude can excel in the force provided you find a way for him to keep up. Claude is going to end up in good tier. If you up his movement, he gets boosted to great tier. But the same could be said for more than a few units. It also doesn't help him that Zinc, who's almost the same unit, joins right at the same time. Chaz starts with Blaze 2 and Freeze 3. Pardon me? Chaz starts with Blaze 2 and Freeze 3. At this point in the game, why even bother with him? That's not going to be enough for me to take someone out of my party at this point. And that right there is the problem with Chaz. He has to find a way into the party, and it's not looking too hot, especially with Lemon also coming in at the same time. But I digress. Chaz is the son of Howl, making 2/3 of our wizards Howl adjacent, and a pretty decent historian. We find him hiding beneath the town of Yeel after Galum has taken over. Chaz reveals to us that we need to find the Holy Sword to defeat Xeon, then tags along because he's interested to see the story play out. If you manage to get some levels into Chaz, he will turn into a damn fine wizard. Worse than Tyrant, but probably better than Kazin. With access to Bolt 2 and Freeze 4 by level 26, he'll certainly earn his keep if we can get him some levels. We're gonna put him in good, based solely on his slow start, and his need to be at a high level to access Freeze 4. We might not even be at level 26 by the end of the game. Lemon is my favorite character in the game. As you know, I'm a sucker for the bad guy turned good storyline, and I'm all in for Lemon. Lemon is the head of the Galum army and does what his king commands. He's along for the ride when the king orders Howl be searched and killed, and even captures a young Bowie and the rest of the force and throws them into prison. When the king orders the invasion of Groundseal without mercy, you start to see the first bit of doubt in his king cross his face. After fighting through the Galum army, on our way to the ancient tower we encountered Lemon, who's seen the error of his ways, but also looks to have been possessed. And that's the last we hear of Lemon until we get back to Grand's Isle and hear rumors of a Red Baron terrorizing the countryside. When we finally confront him on the battlefield, we know all too well who the Red Baron is. Defeating him removes the devil's possession over him. Distraught at what he's done, Lemon tries to take his life multiple times, only to learn that he's something more now. And while he can be knocked down, he can never be killed. Eventually, we catch back up with Lemon, and after pulling himself out of the impact crater he made jumping off a cliff, he agrees to join the Force. Did we need all that recap? Damn right we did. Lemon is a Red Baron, which is basically just the Baron class like Randolph and Jaha can be. He has slightly worse attack and defense than those two, but he does have a higher counterattack rate to balance things out. Oh, and he will auto-res at the end of battle if he falls, since he can't die. He will be a solid addition to the Force if you need a bit of tanky melee oomph. That said, I always feel like Lemon is missing something extra that would make him feel more unique, and I think that thing would be having him be able to equip the Dark Sword without being cursed. I think that would have made him a bit more special and made him stand out a bit more. It would also make sense with the character's lore as well. Lemon is going into the Groovy tier, which is a tier between good and great. I love this guy. And we're done. And I have to say, if you've listened to 44 minutes of me droning on about Shining Force 2 characters, you probably love this game as much as I do. I'll be honest, all this recording has taken a bit of my soul, but I'm happy to get it done. Now, let's get on to the recap of our list. We have Karna as a Master Monk at the top and in her own tier, with Peter following up in Legendary. I think it would be fine to switch these two, mostly because knowing how good and how to use Karna requires some dark knowledge of the game that might not be there the first time around, whereas Peter's always great at what he does. Then in Great, we've got Slade, Bowie, and then Karna as a Vicar. I'm struggling a bit to place her. Could be higher, could be lower. Then Geralt. After them, it's Master Monk Sarah, Sorcerer Tyrant and Kazin. It's really a tie between those two. Then Eric as a Pegasus Knight, both versions of Jaha and Randolph, Sheila, and then the freeze form machine of Tyrant. Lemon is just chilling in the groovy tier. Then we're into good, and kinda stop caring about the order so much. Paladin Eric, May, Claude, Pegasus Knight Rick, Paladin Chester, Paladin Rick, Freya, who might be a bit too low, Jaro, and Chaz, who just takes a bit too long to get up and running. The same thing sort of applies to Freya. Kiwi, also living a good life in his own tier. He's much better than Fine, guys. Kiwi's great. Then, in Fine, it's Zinc, Wizard Kazin, Guyan, Vicar Sarah, Goddess Staff be damned, Luke, Sniper Janet, Higgins, Taya, Road, Pegasus Knight Chester. Why does that Pegasus wing come so late in the game? And then Sniper Ulrich. And in Trash, the units that should just not exist, Brass Gunner Ulrich, Screech, and Brass Gunner Janet. Don't you dare turn my girl into a Brass Gunner. As always, comment on where you think I'm wrong, or if you do think I'm right. I don't get too many comments going, wow, you're right. There are probably better and more thought out lists out there, as there are others who know this game much more than I, but I just love talking about this wonderful, wonderful game. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you want to hear more of my thoughts. Until next time, adios. Oh, are you still here? Okay, I'm gonna let you in on the real, 100% correct Shotting First 2 tier list. It's right here, with Kiwi on top, cause Kiwi conquers all. Kiwi forever, 6 seasons in a movie, Kiwi for life.